And today, I'm having this helps. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm still having trouble connecting. Hopefully this will stop here. All right, good. I think we're good. Today is Sunday. It is August 23rd, and welcome to Commissioner in a Car. Today's Commissioner in a Car is going to deal with the deal that was announced on Friday to finally place term limits on the ballot this year. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But I did want to talk about another thing that concluded this week, which was also the county-led 16 race. That we had our final certification on that on Wednesday, and Niatwa Bullock won the Democratic nomination by 7 votes. As you know, that has went on for a very long time. This was from the June 23rd primary. There was a 6-week delay as one of the candidates decided to go to court to try to prove there was fraud. She was unable to prove that. The judge ordered us to finish the counting, which we did. And now the time frame for challenging that has now gone by. Since we certified on Wednesday, I guess it could happen on Monday. We'll see if we get served on Monday, but there's been no indication of that. And the election has been certified. So congratulations, Niatwa Bullock. I will say that both candidates remain in the race. Charlene Tarver is on the Working Families line. Niatwa Bullock's on the Democratic line for county-led 16. There is no Republican running. So the voters of that district have another chance to decide on this before the general election. Well, on the general election, before someone is seated in that race to replace retiring county legislator Charles Garland. I've said a lot about that race. I'm going to stop. Now, let's go on to the deal to put term limits on the ballot this year for the county executive and the county comptroller. And it's a little bit of a complicated deal. And I'm going to go into it. But first, I have to say, I'm pleased with the deal. It's a compromise. And compromises are not about winning. One side winning, the other side winning. That's not what's happened here. Both sides, 4 sides, we've all gotten something that we want. And that's what Judge Lemondola said in his public comments on this. And it was really because we were able to go to court, we were able to make a deal that made every side get something this year. Here's the deal that has been struck, signed into agreement by all 4 parties on Friday and announced, which will avoid a lengthy lawsuit. And I'll go into why I agreed to the deal as the person who brought the lawsuit, but also as one of the parties, and why I agreed to it. You know, others can say why they agreed to it. And all 4 parties agreed to it willingly. Though there was a lot of wise nudging by the judge to get all parties to give up something to be able to make this deal. But the deal is this. In 2026, on the November ballot, there will be 2 propositions. A proposition placing a 12-year term limit on the county executive and the county comptroller, and a proposition doing a 16-year term limit on the county executive and county comptroller. Because of the even year law, that term limit will start on 2031, because the next term for both those positions is a 3-year term as opposed to a 4-year term. And so in effectiveness, it would mean that if passed by the voters this year, it would be either a 15 or a 19-year term limit on whoever gets elected this year. let me explain. I'll explain how that's going to work in a second, but I want to go through some of the other things that were in the deal that haven't really been talked about as much in the press because everybody's focusing on the term limits. But another thing that was in the deal was an agreement that this issue is not precedent setting at the Board of Elections. This was important for me. As you know, Commissioner Ryan decided not to accept the resolution from the county clerk. That was the main reason why I went to court. And I wanted an agreement that this could never happen again. And if it did ever happen again, what would be the immediate resolution to that? And what we came up with was that if there's ever a disagreement with the Board of Elections, again, on a situation like this, we will seek judicial remedy right away. This was important because I didn't want this case to set precedent that one commissioner can automatically block a resolution from getting on the ballot if it's properly transmitted. And I believe this one was. And in fact, the resolution of this case does not mean that it wasn't. In fact, we're all agreeing to move forward, but no one is saying that the veto non-veto didn't happen, and that the approval meant and the veto didn't mean. We decided to put that question aside to move forward with a deal. And then finally, this deal is a court-ordered stipulation. So that means all four parties have stipulated to it, and the judge has ordered it. And that is important as well, because it makes not only the timing of the deal legal, but also the dueling proposition nature legal, because in the order it clearly states that whichever one gets the most votes is what is going to change the charter of Onondaga County. And again, the voters are going to get this choice. And it's a charter change, so a legislature cannot undo it later on. These are all parts of the deal, and that's what everybody gave up. Basically, the Democrats on the county legislature gave up putting on the 16-year term limit along with the 12. The county executive gave up putting the 12 along with the 16, and he gave up, remember his original deal that he floated, well, his not original deal, but one of his iterations of his deals he floated was this solution to happen in 2027 and not in 2026. So he had to give up allowing the 12-year term limit on this year's ballot along with the 16, and the 12 comes first. Again, I'll go into how that's going to work in a second. Both Commissioner Ryan and I had to give up the 90-day clause for putting a resolution on the ballot and the setting of the precedent. Both of us had to agree that this did not set precedent. And again, because of all of this, because for this to happen, it had to go to court. It had to go to court to waive all these deadlines, to put it on the ballot this year. And I know there's been a lot of chatter. I've seen the comments about that we could have just accepted this deal back when it was offered. This deal was never offered. The deal to put two propositions on the ballot this year was never offered. It was two propositions on the ballot next year, and the language of the higher proposition getting it, we couldn't find precedent for that in any state law or election law. There was something in Troy that may or may not have done it because that was a city. There's a home rule thing that has a city for a city charter change, and we were very uncomfortable that proposition and this proposal would be legal. However, because the judge has ordered it, it is. Because all four parties have stipulated to it. It is in writing not only can the parties not challenge that later on, but the agents of the parties, such as the Democratic and Republican parties, can't challenge it later on as well. We've all agreed to it, and that is why I brought this suit, was to get to a resolution, and we were able to do so. So before I go into why I agreed to it, I'm going to tell you how this works, because a lot of people wonder how this works, because it is unusual. Let's be very clear. The dueling propositions, which was, I'll give County Executive McMahon credit, it was his idea, but the reason we were uncomfortable with it in the first is because it is so unusual. And when you have something that's unusual, you have to do your diligence to find a way to make it work. Now, he proposed this on July 29th, I believe. And he called it his way forward. The problem is that it was for next year. And it couldn't even be for this year, because July 23rd was the day that you have to lay a law on the desk of the legislatures for them to have passed it on August 3rd. That's state law, and it cannot be waived, right? So, and it's just the people who are arguing that it could just don't know the law. Even if they're lawyers, they don't know the law. So that law, to put the law on the desk of the legislatures, to be able to vote on it, that was July 23rd. He didn't even make the suggestion until after that day. And also the day that the legislature was meeting was August 3rd. That was a day after the 90-day deadline that is in election law, that says that a resolution has to be transmitted to the board by that time period for it to be put on the ballot. The only way around that, in my opinion, was for a judge's order to make that legal, and for all parties to stipulate that that's what they wanted it to do, or that's what they wanted to do. And so it is not, this was not possible. This deal was not possible without a lawsuit. No parties were going to agree to this deal without the lawsuit, without going in front of Judge Lamondola. And I give a lot of credit to Judge Lamondola for his suggestions and willingness to take part in this and make this deal happen. Now, so the dueling propositions, let's go over that. What does this mean? So the first proposition on every ballot will be Proposition 1. You got to turn it to the back of the ballot. Oh, there was another part of the deal that seemed small, but it was important to me that we would be putting this on one ballot, that we'd have a single page ballot with front and back like we're used to. This was important to me because I wanted to make sure that nobody tried to push these resolutions onto another page or something else weird because of the length of the ballot. And in fact, because of that deal, we have ordered 22-inch paper, and we're going to have longer ballots. This is a technical thing, but it's important. Anyways, so all ballots in Onondaga County this year will have a front and a back. The front will be the candidates. The back will be the resolutions. This is just like normal. On the back of the ballot, you will have two resolutions. Resolution 1, Resolution 2. Resolution 1 will be to enact a 12-year term limit starting in 2031. Resolution 2 would be to enact a 16-year term limit starting in 2031. Both for the offices of County Executive and County Comptroller. And I'll go into why DA and Clerk and some of these other ones can't be on there. But I've also read the comments about why is it more than 8 years and the president's 8 years. While that's a valid comment, that proposal was not on the table. In fact, the Democrats were very clear that they wanted the term limits to be the same as the term limits for the county legislature, because they're co-equal branches of government. The county executive and the Republicans on the county legislature wanted it to be 16. They feel it's more important than the county legislature, I guess. But we wanted the voters to choose on it. The county legislator Republicans thought they could pass a bill that allowed the voters not to choose on it. Whatever. Anyways, so you have County Resolution 1, 12, County Resolution 16, or 2, 16. Now, you get to vote yes or no on both propositions. You don't get to vote on them together because there is no multiple choice for propositions in New York. 4108B of election law says that it must be in a yes or no question, and I confirmed that with State Board. We talked about that in our settlement talks with the judge as well, and everybody agreed that you couldn't do a multiple choice. So, what happens if neither of them get majority? That means the no gets more than the yes on both of them. Then there are no term limits. If Proposition 1 gets a yes, over 50% yes answers, and Proposition 2 gets under that, where over 50% are no, then Proposition 1 is enacted and it's a 12-year term limit. If Proposition 2 gets over 50% and Proposition 1 gets under 50%, then 16-year term limits are enacted. Now, what happens if both get over 50%? Well, that's that's the crux of why we had to go to court to make this legal. All parties have agreed that if the law that will be passed, there's some steps to go, and we'll go into that in a second. The law that will be passed states right in there, whichever one gets more votes, if both get a yes, is the one that's enacted. So if 12 gets more than 16, it's enacted. If 16 gets more than 12, it's enacted, provided that both of them have over 50% approval. I think we can see that. Well, we'll see what the voters say on this. So all of this is enacted. That's the deal. So let's go into what has to happen now. So on Saturday, the laws were laid upon the desk. That state law that I was talking about, how it had to be laid upon the desk. That's why it was important to get that deal done on Friday, so the legislators could have the law on their desk to pass on September 1st. If the legislature passes this law, it's a single law with both resolutions in it. So you can't pass one without the other. Again, very important. Then the county executive will hold a hearing. Once the county executive holds that hearing, then by September 9th, he has to sign the law. Don't veto it. Just kidding. Sorry, can't help it. Sign the law, transmit it to the clerk. The clerk then has to transmit it to the Board of Elections. All this can be done in email or in person. I expect it to be done before September 9th, but we'll see when it gets done. Then the Board of Elections will have to certify the ballot on September 10th. Once we certify the ballot on September 18th, ballots will go out in the mail. Because the judge has ordered this, able to do that, we can waive the 90-day deadline to put it on the ballot. Both commissioners have signed this stipulation, so there's no going back on our end. Now, if the county legislature does not pass the law, or if the county executive goes back on his word, and vetoes the law, then there is a point in the agreement where we can go back to court, and where, in fact, it's mine. It says that since I brought the action, that I have withdrawn without prejudice, which means that I could restart the court case. But if if all of the stipulations to the agreement are reached, then I will withdraw that with prejudice, which means that I can't bring the court case again on this particular issue. On future issues, I can. But on this particular issue, I can't. That was also very important to me, that I couldn't agree to something and then have the rug pulled out from under us. So that was important and done, by the way. So, why did I agree to this deal. Well, let's start with why I started the lawsuit to begin with. The lawsuit was filed on August 5th. At that time, on August 5th, not only was there no deal to put the term limits on the ballot this year, there was no path to that deal that was legal in my eyes. Because of the 90-day deadline for the board, because of the state laws that require so much time for the legislature to agree to future deals, and also I felt that the law that was in front of us, that was transmitted by Hasina Adams, the clerk of the legislature, on July 17th was legal and we should be acting on it. August 3rd was the deadline for resolutions. You have normal practices that you have 72 hours after a deadline under election law to bring a legal action to start a legal proceeding. So I had 3 days after August 3rd to make this decision to go to court. Now, I've been preparing, but hoping that that on August 3rd that would be done. On August 4th, the legislature met. On August 4th, the county Democratic legislators voted, along with Ken Bush, a Republican. So in a bipartisan vote, voted that they were prepared to go to court to defend their law that they believe was legally signed by the county executive. Now, I was probably going to go to court anyways, because again, the law was in my office. I felt it should be acted on. I felt it was improper for a single commissioner to block that law. And in fact, I think if you read the paperwork, you'll see that we had done a lot of work already to that time to be ready to file. This was not a quick decision, but I did have to make a final decision. And so I made it. I decided that I didn't want to wait till the very last minute. I didn't want to go past the deadline and risk losing a chance to be able to get this on the ballot this year and to pass and to uphold the law that was given to me. However, once our lawyers started negotiating, because the judge did bring the lawyers together from both Kevin Ryan, my counterpart, and he had Bob Smith, and I had Steve Williams, and they brought those two lawyers together. But then it became very clear that the county executive, in fact, he announced that he was hired a lawyer to intervene in the matter, and that meant that the county legislature had to decide to come in as well. They decided to also retain my lawyer, Steve Williams. That was a cost-saving measure because we had aligned interests. There was no need to have separate lawyers, so that we had 3 lawyers. So, you know, that is why I that is why I decided to go to court. And we had all 4 lawyers together, but it was very clear at that point that while we felt we were right on the law, on both the approval of the original law and the failure of the Republican Elections Commissioner for putting it on the ballot this year, that the court case was going to draw out so long that we were going to run out of time to even get it on the ballot. That September 18th deadline is hard deadline. That's when ballots go out to military and overseas voters. And while we could go past that and then reissue ballots, that's a messy process. And so we started exploring what could be a resolution to get it on the ballot this year. We were never going to settle if it wasn't going to be on the ballot this year. And that was a sticking point. And if you remember, and you look at all the paper articles about the original proposition that was given by the county executive and some of the Republicans on the county ledge. It was always to push it to next year. And why is that big? Why is that a big difference? A, voters want it this year, but also we're looking at, in Onondaga County, up to 200,000 voters are going to vote this year. Next year, it might be less than 100,000 voters that vote in a local year. That's a big difference, and this is something that should be voted on by as many people as possible. I mean, maybe this should be done in the presidential year, but this is the year that this was given to us. But also, last year, when the county legislature term limits were passed, by the way, at the last minute by the county legislature, which was then controlled by the Republicans. In fact, they needed a waiver to have a special meeting to hold their meeting before the 90-day deadline was up. They were able to lay the law on the desk at the right time, but the special meeting, by the way, I just looked at the calendar. It's July 25th, but this year was the date to lay it on the desk. Doesn't matter. Anyways, the legislature, said at that time that we would revisit it this year to put term limits on the county executive and county comptroller if term limits passed for the county legislature last year. It passed overwhelmingly. The Democrats upheld that promise. The Republicans seemed to drag their feet on it, or at least want it to be 16 instead of 12. So we were not going to agree to a deal that didn't have it on the ballot this year, which we got it. We got it on the ballot this year. So now, that was one sticking point that I needed to agree to this deal. The other sticking point was making sure that this was not precedent setting. And the deal that we came up with said that this is not precedent setting, that B, if a future disagreement comes up, that the Board of Elections won't wait, we will go straight to court. That will probably mean suing each other again and asking a judge to make a decision on a future resolution. Now, I hope that'll never happen again. In fact, it's never happened before. But I hope it'll never happen again. But it was important to me to make sure that neither commissioner, whether it's me in there or Kevin Ryan there, could say no to a resolution duly transmitted to us. Our role is ministerial. We should not be in here making these value judgments. We should just be putting it on the ballot and letting the voters make the value judgment. So that's why I agreed to the deal. And I think it's a good deal. I don't really go into who won what. Like, who won the deal? That's not the point. The point is the voters won, because the voters get to choose this year. Now, yes, the county exec got both on the ballot. But remember, his original position was neither on the ballot. But he got both on the ballot. And one of his positions was only 16 on the ballot. He's had several different positions throughout all of this. The Democrats have been very clear. They wanted 12 on the ballot. They have to allow for 16 to be on the ballot. But they got 12 on the ballot. The Republicans got 16 on the ballot, but they had to allow for 12 to be on the ballot. And the Board of Elections got that it wasn't precedent setting, and and we also got the single page ballot and a few other things. So this was a good deal. It's a deal that everybody walks away with, that they can live with the deal, but not everybody is totally happy, because that's what deals are. And I'm glad that we don't have to spend $1 million to get to this point. But it was, again, I have to say this because there's been a lot of just wrong speculation out there that we could have gotten this deal a month ago. That's not true. It wasn't even proposed until 2 weeks ago, and it was proposed for next year. So this deal was never something that we could have gotten outside of Judge Lamondola ordering us to do it, at least in my opinion and in my lawyer's opinion. And I believe the correct thing to get by the legal deadlines, to waive them, to allow us to put it on the ballot and be free from anyone bringing a lawsuit, especially the ones that of the agents of the party and the people that are part of the deal from being able to sue to stop this going forward. Or if it gets enacted and there's an electoral outcome that people don't like, I don't think that people can sue to overturn this because all parties have agreed to this. So, that being said, if they do, we'll be here again. But I don't think they will. I think most people are happy that the voters get to choose. In fact, Ryan McMahon said he's happy the voters get to choose. I'm happy the voters get to choose. Nicole Watts is happy the voters get to choose. We've all said that on the record. And so now the voters will get to choose. And I'm very happy with that. So that's it. That's the deal. I'm sure we'll be talking about it more as ballots go out on September 18th to remind people how to make these votes and why. So there we go. Thank you very much for tuning in to Commissioner Carr. Next week, I'll be talking about the NYSECA, New York State Elections Commissioner Association Conference, which I'm going to next week, Monday through Thursday. It's actually in our backyard. We're at Turning Stone this time. This is our summer conference where we elect officers and get trained by the state board to get ready for the general election. I'll go over everything that happens there next Sunday. All right, that's all I got. Thank you very much for tuning in to Commissioner Carr, and enjoy your week. Bye-bye.